Hey guys, today I'm going to tell you how I financed my Tesla Model 3, so if you're interested in a lot of numbers, stay tuned. So just to let you guys know, we didn't really need this car. It was more of a luxury purchase, but I figured Tesla's a tech company, it's a futuristic car, and it's going to save money in the long run, so let's just go for it. So to start this off, we actually had 3 cars before we even bought the Tesla, so we're lucky enough to have that extra car around. We have the 2 Civics, and then we also have my STI. And so if you've been around my channel long enough, you've seen all 3 of those cars in the form of videos, video tutorials on my channel. And so basically the STI is kind of almost the odd car out because it was my weekend car. And so back years and years ago, I used to take it to the snow a lot. And I mean like every weekend a lot. Like we had the snow passes to up to North Star for a couple of years. And so literally when we had those passes, we were going up every single weekend to Tahoe. And the car is great. Don't get me wrong. It absolutely rips through the snow with snow tires, but we don't really go snowboarding very much anymore, maybe once or twice a year. And so that was kind of, like I said, the odd car out. And because it's a performance car, it takes 91 octane. And the insurance is a little bit pricey also because it is a performance car. So that was kind of the car that we decided to trade in, because I also use my Civic for rideshare. And the gym I go to, 24, this particular 24 is really, like, the parking lot is really tiny. The spaces are really like slim. So I don't care if that car gets banged up. So you know, my Civic has its uses already, and so the STI is kind of the one we decided to trade in because we obviously don't need 4 cars. 3 is already enough. So if I had time to plan this a little bit more, I probably would have been able to sell my car for a little bit more, but at this point it kind of is what it is. So basically around Thanksgiving I was reading up on the federal credit, and I didn't realize at the time that the federal credit would go down to $1,800 after June 30th. And so basically at that point I was like, well crap, I got to order the car now because I don't want to lose that much of a credit 6 months from now, because that's, 6 months and now is basically the same thing. So, because I wanted to private sell it, and normally when you would private sell a car, you would want to do that before you even buy the car. That way you've got cash in hand, because it's kind of hard with the timing. And so I already knew off the bat, looking around online, that the car, my 06 STI, could get about 20 to 21 private sale. So it's an 06 STI. It had 48,000 miles on it. So not a lot of miles, obviously, because it's my weekend warrior. And so I could still get quite a bit for it if I were to try to private sell it. The problem is I only had very little time to do that. So, it kind of wasn't really worth it to try and do that and hope somebody would buy it like literally within a week, because they'd have to get their own loan most likely and all that stuff. And so private selling it was almost right off the bat not viable. So I also looked at trading it in, and from doing research online, I knew that trading in would be about 18 to 20,000 that I could get. So I had that number in mind, and you can trade cars into like CarMax is where I took it, and so I was like, well, let's give that a shot. Also knowing that I can trade it into Tesla as well. So I was like, well, if I can get rid of it real quick at CarMax, if it's worth it, we'll do that. And so I go down to CarMax, made an appointment, all that stuff, and the guy was like a total salesman, right? Oh, CarMax is the second largest dealership in the country. We have great prices, blah, 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 that whole sales thing, right? And so, they get the car appraised, blah, 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 and he tells me, oh, we'll give you 16 grand for it. I'm like, come on, really? You just try to upsell me with all this stuff and you're giving me 16 grand when I know it's like the bottom limit is 18 for this car, especially because it's a very rare car. It has not very many miles on it, and that's what you're going to give me? Yeah, okay. So I had that in mind. I had that offer for a week, and I was like, that's kind of already off the table. So at that point, I kind of had to hope Tesla would give me more. If not, then I'd have to sell it to CarMax and lose even more money. So that was kind of the options I was left with. So at that point, I was like, well, let's just hope Tesla gives me more than that. So we'll get more into the trade-in process a little bit later once I go through that. So just to recap, the car I bought was the mid-range rear-wheel drive, which is basically the cheapest model right now. But after taxes, all that stuff, it turned out to be $53.2K out the door. So when you go through this order process, there are a couple of options you can do in terms of financing. One, you can buy the car outright with cash. 2, you can finance through Tesla, or 3, you can just find your own bank or your credit union, get a loan from them, and then, obviously they're going to pay Tesla. So the first thing I did before I even ordered the car was look around online, because I knew I was going to need to get a small loan for the car. And so you want to see what rates are out there for the particular time. So when I was looking around, the going rate was about 3.5% for a small car loan. And so knowing that I have really good credit, I knew I could probably get that rate, or maybe even a little bit lower. So at that point, I knew that the loan that I was going to get was probably going to be about $20,000 to $21,000. And I'll tell you how I came up with that number later. So that's kind of the number I was looking for. So the first thing I did after I figured out all this stuff was, let's go start looking around who has better rates and, all that type of stuff with term and all that stuff. And so I looked at Tesla's website first. When you actually go through the order process, it'll tell you, hey, Tesla will give you a certain rate. So when I looked in that spot on the order part, it said Tesla would give me a 4% rate. And so, I'm looking online, 3.5 is better. That's already kind of a maybe. So basically I talked to Tesla, like a rep, and they were telling me that the way Tesla finances their cars is basically they just go out to a bank and find you a loan, and then you pay Tesla. So in essence, you're almost paying Tesla a convenience fee just to get the loan for you. I was actually thinking that a lot of big car companies, Honda, Ford, whatever, they have their own credit, like credit union type thing. And so basically you can finance the car through the company. So through Honda, through Toyota, whatever. So that's kind of what I thought it was. So when I found out that basically Tesla just goes to a bank and finds you a loan, basically you're going to be paying more in percentage as a convenience fee to them. So at that point, financing through Tesla was already a no-go for me. And so basically what I did is, we have our house here and we obviously have a mortgage with the bank. So that bank I talked to see what they could give me. We did the whole pre-approval process, blah, blah, blah. And so when the lady came back, she was like, oh, we can give you 3.75%. And I was a little bit bummed because we have a huge mortgage with you. You can't do any better than that. So that was the rate she gave me. So I was like, yeah, okay, I'll keep that in mind. So then I went to another bank that my family does banking with, and we have VIP status, whatever, with this bank. And so I tried to do it online, and I tried to fill out the form, and it wouldn't let me get past this one screen where it was like, what kind of car do you have? And I kept putting in Tesla, and then it would just be like, oh, it's not working, or whatever, I'm like, dude, what's going on? So the next day I called them. I'm like, hey, can I'm trying to get a pre-approval for a loan for a car. Can you help me? And he was like, oh yeah, Teslas are special for us. You can't do it online. You have to do it through us. So I'm like, oh, come on. So I'm talking to the guy. Literally it took me 5 minutes. I tried doing it twice online, and it took me 5 minutes to put in all the information. But since I can't do that, you know how when you talk to people on the phone, sometimes it's hard to get the information through, or they're messing up letters, things like that. And so it took half an hour to get to where we got to. And I didn't have, obviously I only had a week to do this whole thing. I was scrambling like mad. And the guy was like, oh, I need some information from your wife, because basically the loan is in both our names. I didn't have that information right offhand. So I was like, okay, whatever, forget it. So basically I didn't even get a quote for a pre-approval from that bank, because it took too much time. I didn't have that much time. So I was like, okay, forget it, whatever. So then I remembered that my uncle and one of my buddies has, money. Well, okay, so basically my friend has all his banking at this one credit union, and then my uncle also got a Model 3 as well, and he got his loan through this credit union. So I was like, all right, let's give it a try. So I fill out the stuff online, same thing. And the pre-approval comes back and they go, oh, we can give you, a 5-year loan at, was it 3.5%? So basically right where I was looking, or right where the going rate was. And that was $350-ish a month. And I was like, okay, not too bad. I can definitely do better than that. We can afford to pay more off a month. And so when I was talking to him, I was like, hey, what kind of rates can you give me for a 4-year term loan? And so she, puts in her numbers, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, okay, well, if you want a 4-year, we can do that at 3.39%. And the monthly will be about $472. And I was like, okay, that'll work. It's lower than the going rate, and it's something we can afford. So that worked for me. It wasn't too high where it was $700 or $800 a month, because that's kind of ridiculous. You don't want to be paying $700 or $800 a month for a car loan on top of having to pay insurance for it and everything else. That's just kind of a lot of money to be thrown away at, every every month. So 475 is not too bad, right in the middle kind of, and we can obviously handle it. And basically for me, it's a 4-year loan, so it's not too long. It's a tech car, right? So I'm hoping it's going to still work in 10 years. Like Tesla better not go down the drain or something, or I'm going to be SOL. But 4-year loan's not too long, where basically, since it's tech, hopefully it's not too old. For me personally, I ROI the crap out of my cars. I try to anyway. And so I'm not planning to sell this car until it basically dies. That's kind of how I drive my cars, like into the ground, basically. Like my Civic, that thing is going into the ground until it doesn't go, like, can't go anymore. And it's already a worthless car anyways. So, as long as I can get away driving it for rideshare, I can make money off it, and it's great. So ROI is basically definitely the way you want to go, so you can get the most out of your car. So like I said, I ended up getting a 4-year term, at $472 a month, which isn't too bad. And basically, don't get me wrong, we could have bought the car outright. Like right now, right this second, I could go pay off the car if I wanted to. The problem with that is, since we just bought this house about a half a year ago, houses are freaking expensive, especially in the Bay Area where we live. And so paying off the car now kind of didn't really make sense, because it's going to put our reserves, like our savings, at a lower rate, like a lower level than I want it to be at this point. And so basically the main reason why I wanted to get a loan is just for cash flow. So basically that way we have cash flow to use, like liquid cash, if something happens. So say an emergency happens and we have to dish a bunch of money, it'll be there. It's just, like I said, cash flow. I don't want to have to pull money out of my stocks or maybe one of our retirement accounts or other investments that we have, and be kind of SOL because we don't have enough liquid cash. So that's kind of the reason why I wanted a loan for the car. So back to the actual process. You put the car in, your order in, you pick, your color, if you want the fancy rims or you don't want the fancy rims, all that stuff. Then basically once you get to the appraisal part for a trade-in, what they do is, so like I said, CarMax, you have to take the car down there, they drive it around, they do all this stuff. Well, I think because Tesla's dealing with so many people right now, because of the whole push for the Model 3, that all you have to do is basically send them pictures and you put it through your order on the account. You just take pictures of the front, the back, the side, and the odometer. You send it into them, and basically all they do is they just take the pictures, look at them, and then they give you an appraisal within a couple hours. So it was a super easy process. And basically after a couple hours, I got the appraisal. They wanted to give me 18.6. So I was like, yes, I'm taking that. Screw CarMax. I'm going to trade it in Tesla. No hassle. Easy. So that's what we ended up doing, is trading it into Tesla. So by this point, you might be doing some math and you're thinking 21K loan plus 18K trade-in doesn't equal 53K. So where's the rest? You're right. So basically, remember I put a deposit on the car two and a half years ago. So that's another 1,000. And when you put your order in, they make you pay $2,500 to basically reserve the car. So all that equals about 43K. There's still 10K out there. What happened? Where's that? So that is the federal credit and this California state credit that I'm getting. So $7,500 credit I'm going to get back on my tax return. And then also there's a $2,500 California rebate, obviously because they live in California, that we're also qualified for. So that's the other 10K. So how did I get that into basically this whole equation? So there's two ways I could have done this. One, I could have piled it into the loan, which would have been 31K loan, or I could have dished it up front. So let's just say I did the latter and basically dished it up front. Now the reason I did that is because, yeah, you can get a 31K loan and, once you get the credit, you can just dump it into the loan and basically it'll be a lot cheaper, than it was. But the problem with that is you're going to get a loan at 31K. And so basically your monthly payments are going to be based on that 31K. It doesn't matter if you dish 5K now, 10K now, after you get the loan, your monthly payment is still going to be the same. So that kind of screws you up. So I was like, well, I don't want to have like a 4-year loan where basically I'm going to dish 10K right away and then have, a payment that's basically I'm going to pay off the car in like 2 years instead of 4. So I don't really want to do that. So basically what I end up doing is just dish the extra 10K, in advance. And that way I've got the normal loan that I'm looking for. And then I can just refill my reserves once I get the 10K back from the state and federal. So one thing you could do though is if you wanted to take that 31K loan, once you get the 10K, instead of dumping it into the loan to reduce it, I mean, the interest is going to be the interest. For my particular loan, it was over 4 years for a 21K loan. I'm paying about $1,700 in interest. So it's not too bad. But what you could do is, if you want, take that 10K that you're getting back, don't dump it in the loan, but you want to invest that in something else that's going to grow, over the 4 years or 5 years, whatever you have the loan for. And if that percentage rate that you're getting back on your investment is going to pay for more than the loan interest, then you should just do that instead, because that way you're going to make money on your money. You basically make money work for you. So you could do that. In 2 years or so, I might just pay off the rest of the loan. We'll have to see how we're doing, financially, how much savings we have, if I'm comfortable with that. But I could do that too. That way I could save half. It's probably not half the interest with all the compound interest, but save a chunk of the interest that we're paying. So that's basically how we did the loan piece. For insurance, we have basically right now we have like a multi-policy loan, and we've got, without getting too specific, we have like 4 different policies for assets that we have. And so I had just redone that about a month before we bought the car just to get like a cheaper rate. And so I didn't really want to do that all over again just to look for one car worth of things. I understand if you have if all you have is cars and you have an auto policy loan, then sure, shop around and see what you can get. But because we have 4 different policies, it's kind of a hassle to try and redo everything again. So insurance was just whatever. The current insurance company we're with, I just took whatever they gave me. So that ended up being $1,400 a year, which is kind of a lot actually. When I was looking online, I was seeing quotes for a little bit cheaper than that. But again, it depends on your financial situation. It depends on your credit. It depends how well you drive. And so $1,400 I think is a little high for me, but whatever. I'm just going to take that for the convenience. And of course, this is my wife's financial situation. So your situation probably could be different. So it depends on what you're comfortable with and what you can afford. But here are some things to think about if you're going to finance a car. Don't think of a car as an asset. I always thought cars were not assets, and I don't even consider them investments really, because they depreciate. So it's, a depreciable asset. So for me, I just buy the car and just pretty much think of it as an expense, because that's basically what it is. You also want to know what kind of rate you can get before you even start talking to cars. So remember I mentioned I had looked online. You want to make sure you know that. That way you know what kind of rates you can get for you. And with that thought, it's probably a good idea just to get some pre-approvals anyway. That way, once you get in there and buy the car, you know what kind of rate you're going to get, and you're not going to be surprised by that. If you're going to buy a new car, you should put at least 20% down. And in my case, we put over 50% down. So looking at month to month, you really don't want to be spending more than 35% of your pre-tax income on a car, because there's a lot of expenses everybody has. So you basically want to try and pay with everything you can with cash if possible. You want to try and keep the term as short as possible. Obviously the longer you have a loan, the more interest they're going to get out of you. So when you're searching for a car, you basically want to look at the total price of the car, not the month-to-month payment. Because if you look at it as a month-to-month payment, that's how they get you with the interest, because the lower the month-to-month, that means the longer the term, which means they're going to make more interest off you. Now, like I just mentioned, you obviously want to think of it as a total price, because transportation is actually the second highest expense in the American household per month. So those are some tips if you're going to finance a car, and of course my own finance experience with buying a Model 3. Do you think this car, the cheapest one at $53K, is really affordable to the everyday person? What percentage of reservation holders from 2.5 years ago do you think are holding out for the $35K version, even if they're not going to get the federal credit anymore? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.